All right, let's get right into this explainer. Today we're mapping out the Michelle Hampton investigation. It's a deeply tragic, honestly baffling case of greed and betrayal. We're going to break down the heartbreaking abduction and murder of this young mother from Clayton, Missouri, whose life was taken in a crime that completely shocked the community. And look, what makes this case so uniquely disturbing isn't just the sheer brutality. It's how rapidly a totally normal Wednesday morning shattered into absolute chaos and how closely connected these perpetrators actually were to the victim's own family. Picture this. It's 7 a.m., broad daylight. People are out and about. Michelle is forced into a truck at gunpoint right in front of her twin sister, Samantha, and her two young nephews. But here is the most staggering detail of the whole thing. Samantha recognized the attacker immediately. It was her own boyfriend, 43-year-old Anwan Mosby. This wasn't some stranger lurking in the shadows, you know? This was a familiar face committing a literally brazen crime right in front of a captive audience. So, let's look at Section 1, a brazen daylight abduction. This whole terrifying sequence, it all goes down in a condensed 30-minute window. At 7 a.m., Michelle is shoved into a yellow Ram truck. But her twin sister, Samantha, she doesn't just freeze up. She immediately jumps into her own car and starts this high-speed pursuit, tailing her boyfriend and her captive sister from Clayton straight into nearby St. Louis. And she only stops following them around 7:30 a.m. Why? Because one of the suspects, who she later identifies as Mosby himself, literally leans out and opens fire on her car. Thankfully, she wasn't hit, and she peels off to call 911, bringing the police into this terrifying equation. To really make sense of how incredibly reckless this was, retired NYPD detective Tom Smith reviewed the case and hit the nail on the head. He said, "He's known to the family, it's in front of her house, he's driving the car that he drives all the time. It wasn't really a puzzle to put together." So the crucial takeaway here is that we are definitely not looking at criminal masterminds. Like Detective Smith points out, there was almost zero planning involved. They used a familiar car, they did it in front of eyewitnesses who knew them intimately, and basically handed the police their own identities on a silver platter. Moving on to Section 2, the tragic timeline. Okay, so after getting away from Samantha's pursuit, these guys actually force Michelle through multiple St. Louis bank drive-thrus. They are literally caught on security camera videos doing this, with Michelle clearly visible in the back seat right across from the teller tubes. At one bank, they force her to attempt a $10,000 withdrawal, but the bank only lets her take out $2,000. At another stop, the teller actually asks Michelle to come inside to finalize the transaction. Well, that totally spooked the suspects, and they speed away. So they're scrambling, getting only a fraction of the cash they wanted, all while leaving this massive digital footprint on the bank cameras. Meanwhile, a frantic search is underway. Samantha is using the Life 360 app on her phone to pinpoint her sister's location. She hands that vital tracking info over to the cops, who rush to the coordinates. They find Michelle's phone discarded, but tragically, Michelle is nowhere to be seen. The trail just goes totally cold. That is until exactly 11 a.m. when a 911 call comes in reporting shots fired on the northwest side of St. Louis. This is 4 hours after the initial abduction. And sadly, that brings us to the grim reality of the 11 a.m. crime scene. Police arrive at an alleyway and discover Michelle's body. She'd been shot 5 times in the head. Near her body, investigators recover a .40 caliber shell casing and, terribly, a bank withdrawal receipt from those forced drive-through stops. At this point, the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department's Homicide Division takes over. This kidnapping had escalated into an absolutely senseless murder. Which leads us to the most pressing question of all: why? Let's get into Section 3, the $40,000 motive. $40,000. That's it. That is the number that cost Michelle Hampton her life. Shortly before her death, Michelle had received a $40,000 settlement from her brother. And in just an innocent, passing conversation, her twin sister Samantha shared this exciting news with her boyfriend, Anwan Mosby. And that one remark, it instantly became Mosby's violent motive. Detective Tom Smith gives a really chilling perspective on this part of the case. He explains, they get that tunnel vision of just money-driven violence and not thinking down the line. And that brilliantly illustrates the dangerously narrow focus of the criminal mind here. Mosby heard $40,000 and just became entirely consumed by it. He wasn't thinking about the security cameras, the eyewitnesses, or, the fact that he was literally dating the victim's sister. He had complete tunnel vision, driven solely by that payout. Section 4, a trail of evidence. Because these guys clearly weren't thinking ahead, they left behind a massive trail of breadcrumbs. First off, police discovered that the yellow Ram truck they used had actually been stolen back in October. but crucially, it had a built-in AT&T tracker. So investigators ping it, and they locate the truck hidden in the garage of an abandoned home. When they search the property, they find an empty bank envelope with one of Michelle's withdrawal slips tucked right inside. But the biggest break actually came from outside. In a nearby dumpster, police recover a hoodie that perfectly matched the one worn by the suspect in those bank surveillance videos. And then forensic science swoops in to absolutely seal the deal. Testing on that discarded hoodie quickly confirmed the presence of Anwan Mosby's DNA. This definitively linked him to the stolen truck, the bank runs, and the crime scene. After a brief pursuit, police arrested Mosby, finding a phone and a gun right inside his vehicle. The physical footprint they left was just way too large to outrun. Which brings us to Section 5, Arrests and Unanswered Questions. So looking at the suspects, first, we have 43-year-old Anwan Mosby, the sister's boyfriend. He admitted to investigators that he plotted the kidnapping and he admitted to being the shooter. He's now facing first-degree murder and a federal kidnapping charge. But, he didn't act alone. Police searched Mosby's phone and found conversations with a guy named Manny, who they identified as 36-year-old Emmanuel Suarez. Security cameras caught Suarez driving that stolen truck, and his DNA was also found on items in that same dumpster. Suarez is charged as a co-conspirator with first-degree murder and first-degree robbery. Combined, these two men are staring down a laundry list of over 30 charges. Both have pleaded not guilty. Now here's where things take a super dark turn. After his arrest, Mosby actually claimed to investigators that he gave Michelle a chance to run before he shot her. But Detective Smith offers a much colder, way more calculated translation of that. He notes, "I think getting her out of the car is the reasoning for that. Still thinking they're going to get away with this." Basically, getting her out of the stolen truck was just a tactical move so her blood and DNA wouldn't end up inside the vehicle. It wasn't some act of mercy, it was a sick, clinical calculation by men who somehow still believed they were going to walk away scot-free. Which really just leaves us with this final, haunting question. Why ruthlessly execute a victim after securing the money while leaving an eyewitness who knew your exact identity entirely unharmed? I mean, Mosby got the cash. He knew Michelle's sister Samantha, had chased them, and knew exactly who he was. Killing Michelle did absolutely nothing to protect his identity. It is a baffling, devastating contradiction that just perfectly captures the senselessness of this whole tragedy. What starts as a money grab descends into completely illogical, devastating violence, leaving a young mother gone and a family forever shattered by someone they trusted. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this structured look helped you make sense of the tragic and chaotic timeline of the Michelle Hampton investigation.